What is the latest information that you have on the Iran missile strikes that targeted these two Iraqi bases, and what are authorities there saying about it?
Well, just a short time ago, Rosemary, the Iraqi military command here released a statement saying that between 1:45 and 2:15 a.m. local time, Iraq, they say, came under missile attack. A total of 22 missiles targeting coalition bases. They say 17 of those missiles struck Al-Assad air base, that is in the western Al-Anbar province. They say 2 of those missiles did not explode. 5 other missiles, they say, targeted Erbil province in the semi-autonomous Kurdish region. Now, we had heard from security officials in Erbil earlier saying that it was 2 missiles. One impacted the airport and another one to the west of the city. And so far, the Iraqi military says that there are no casualties in that missile strike. We have not heard from the Iraqi political leadership here, the prime minister, the government. So far, no official reaction. We have not been able to reach Iraqi officials. But of course, Rosemary, this is what they have been really concerned about. We have heard them express their concerns over the past few days. The Iraqi prime minister making the argument for why U.S. forces should leave his country, saying they're concerned that Iraq is turning into a battlefield for Iran and the United States. Also, something very interesting to point out, some people are questioning why that choice of target, why Erbil, the capital of the semi-autonomous Kurdish region, was hit just a few days after that parliamentary session where you had that vote calling on the government to push U.S. and coalition forces out of the country. That session was boycotted by the Kurds. So some are questioning whether there was perhaps some sort of a message to the Kurds and the Kurdish leadership in this country. Rosemary.
All right. Many thanks to Jumana Karaje joining us live from Baghdad with those details. Appreciate it. Let's cross over now to the Saudi capital, Riyadh, and CNN's international diplomatic editor, Nick Robertson. So, Nick, the much-anticipated retaliatory strikes from Iran have now taken place, and now we're seeing possible signs of de-escalation. We'll know more in a few hours once President Trump makes his statement. But what is the reading on this from your vantage point there?
Well, there's 2 messages here from Iran. One is external and one is internal. The message externally from the foreign minister is that this was a proportional response. That is to say, this should draw a line under any further attacks. Of course, they're warning that if the United States responds, then there will be an escalation. You would expect them to say that. But the message, the international community, specifically the United States and its allies, is this was a proportional response for what you did to us. The message internally is something different. They're calling it a hard strike. Leadership saying that this was a crushing response to the United States killing Qasem Soleimani. So on the one hand, they're sort of wanting to, in the home audience, make this a success, but internationally they're giving the impression that they don't want to escalate the situation further. And I think, you know, when we look at the target that was chosen and what happened here, specifically the Al-Assad airbase, I've been there. It's at a remote location. It is a massive, sprawling base. Iran has fired multiple ballistic missiles into it, but by the U.S. accounts, not caused any casualties. If the Iranians had wanted to cause casualties, they could have targeted the U.S. embassy in Baghdad. They said they wanted military targets. They could have targeted more densely packed U.S. military posts inside Iraq and caused potentially greater casualties than they have done. So they've chosen what is essentially a soft military target where they could apparently avoid causing any U.S. casualties and themselves avoid creating an escalation in the tensions here. So I think the message here is that they are creating the possibility for an off-ramp. But of course, they've never fired these ballistic missiles in this way before. They're domestically made. They've been made under sanctions. So there's a huge message to the U.S. allies in the region here as well, that Iran will use these missiles in its own name, from its its own country to target places in the region. It is capable of doing that, and certainly these are the same missiles that the Iranians have given to the Houthis in Yemen, that the Houthis in Yemen have fired at the capital here, Riyadh, in the past. I've seen those missiles. Saudis have shown them to us. They are quite large in size and potentially hugely deadly. So, you know, in Riyadh here, they're aware that these missiles can also be fired at them. But it does seem the Iranians are aiming to create the space for perhaps politics to pick up if this is the end of the military track right now.
Yeah, certainly a day filled with many messages. And Nick Robertson bringing us that live report from Riyadh. Many thanks to you. We turn to Washington now, and CNN White House correspondent Jeremy Diamond is with us. So, Jeremy, we now await word from President Trump in just a few hours from now, in fact, to find out what his likely next move might be. But a tweet he posted earlier may offer some indication of where he's going with this. What are you hearing?
That's right, Rosemary. Well, it took us 5 days to see what the Iranian response to President Trump's killing of the General Qasem Soleimani, that drone strike that he ordered. And now that we know what the Iranian response is, we are also seeing how the president is responding to that. And it is not quite the military threats that he had been issuing during many of those 5 days. Instead, what we're seeing from the president, so far at least, appears to be an optimistic note. The president saying all is well, so far so good. Those are the words that he posted in that tweet last night. He also teed up the fact that he will be giving a statement later this morning. But for now, at least, it does appear that the president is perhaps trying to step back from the brink a little bit here, despite the fact that he had set that red line saying that if Iran targeted any Americans or any American interests in the region, the president seems very focused on this notion of casualties, pointing to that in that tweet. Of course, as I just noted, the president had talked about American interests as well, suggesting that there didn't necessarily have to be casualties in order to prompt the massive American military response that he had teed up. 52 targets, you'll remember he had mentioned. Instead, it appears that the president is stepping back here, but we will have to wait and see what his statement is later this morning.
Yes, absolutely. Jeremy Diamond bringing us the very latest on that from Washington. Many thanks. So let's get the latest now from Tehran. And journalist Ramin Mostagem is in the Iranian capital. He joins us now live. So, Ramin, Iran has hit back with these strikes on these two bases in Iraq, but it appears some effort was made to avoid U.S. casualties. How likely is it that that was a deliberate act on the part of Iran? Do they have the capability to do that?
Rosemary, in fact, the Iranian officials, they don't want to go into the details of the strike, or what they call it, harsh response to American forces. Analysts close to the IRGC and high-ranking officials try to say that the huge human casualties have been inflicted on American forces in Iraq, in Al-Anbar and Erbil. The American, they say, are hiding the number of casualties and try to show that, okay, everything is normal. But actually, Iranian authorities say that the human casualties has been huge on the side of American forces. Rosemary?
All right, Ramin, many thanks to you joining us there live from Tehran.